In America, the price tag for chasing the so-called American dream hovers at around $3,500 a month just to keep your basic life afloat, to keep the lights on and the water running. But what if I told you there's a secret roadmap, a hidden network of people who've basically torn up that invoice and tossed it in the trash? These aren't folks with six-figure jobs or sparkling credit. They're not the tech wizards or Wall Street types. In fact, many don't pay rent at all. I'm not talking about pitching a tent behind a strip mall or parking an RV behind a Walmart. I'm talking about something bigger, entire ghost towns, places the government seems to have erased from the map, and other hideouts tucked away in plain sight. Welcome to the invisible economy, a parallel world where living costs you nothing, and the only real rule is, keep your head down and your mouth shut. While the rest of us are running like hamsters on a wheel, trading most of our paychecks for a closet-sized apartment in a city that doesn't even know we exist, there's an entire underground of survivalists who've figured out the cheat codes. They're squatting in legal gray zones you could drive a double-wide through, from legendary adverse possession cases in the rural South where someone can claim a house left abandoned for years to wild, off-grid communities out west that don't care what the taxman thinks. These people aren't just scraping by. They're thriving, picking up the pieces from a housing market that's completely imploded for regular folks. It's dark. It's definitely not all above board. And honestly, it might be the smartest or wildest way to live in 2026. Now, I'm not suggesting you break into your neighbor's guest house while they're off vacationing in Florida. That's a one-way ticket to jail, and orange jumpsuits are rarely in style. What I am saying is, there are real places out there where the law is more of a suggestion than a rulebook, and rent is nothing but a myth. Today, we're going off-grid sometimes following the law, sometimes dancing along the edge of it. So, pack your bags and your curiosity. Let's find out what it actually takes to live for free in a country that seems determined to charge you for the very air you breathe. If you're worn out from letting rent run your life, tired of squeezing every penny to make it from payday to payday, or just quietly wondering if there's another way to exist in America, smash that like button and make sure you're subscribed to Where to Live TV. This channel is your map to places you've probably never heard of, forgotten towns, communities where rent is a foreign word, and survival strategies that still work if you know where to look. Trust me, the places coming up are going to challenge everything you think you know about living in America. Let's get started. First stop, the forgotten towns of the Midwest. And let's be clear, we're not talking about the parts with overpriced coffee shops and $3,000 hipster lofts. Nope, we're heading beyond the faded for sale signs, deep into the towns that time and progress left behind. Honestly, even the IRS probably lost the paperwork on these places. Out here, in the back roads of Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, and the Dakotas, the American dream didn't just pause, it packed up and drove away, leaving a trail of empty houses and shuttered factories. The local economy now exists in the hope that the gas station doesn't run out of beef jerky and the post office keeps delivering once a week. But here's where it gets wild. While people in the city are selling organs to afford a windowless studio in someone else's basement, these towns are facing a different kind of crisis too. Many empty homes, not enough breathing bottom. It's the landlord's worst nightmare and the squatter's ultimate fantasy. In rural Missouri, a bidding war basically means two raccoons fighting over a week-old piece of pizza. Investors, they don't even bother. Their GPS gets confused and gives up halfway there. Rent hasn't just dropped, it's evaporated into the cornfields. What you have is an unplanned experiment in minimalism, whether anybody wanted it or not. Leave a house empty for a decade and suddenly the town gets desperate. They're not searching for tenants, they're just hoping for someone with a heartbeat. Some towns will practically hand you a house for the price of a Netflix subscription, as long as you swear to keep the roof from caving in. It's the ultimate barter. You bring the carbon dioxide, they supply the four walls. No credit check required. Honestly, if your credit score was dazzling, you probably wouldn't be searching for a free spot in a place where the main attraction is a statue of a giant potato. Let's get started. First stop, the forgotten towns of the Midwest. And let's be clear, we're not talking about the parts with overpriced coffee shops and $3,000 hipster lofts. Nope, we're heading beyond the faded for sale signs, deep into the towns that time and progress left behind. Honestly, even the IRS probably lost the paperwork on these places. Out here, in the back roads of Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, and the Dakotas, the American dream didn't just pause, it packed up and drove away, leaving a trail of empty houses and shuttered factories. The local economy now exists in the hope that the gas station doesn't run out of beef jerky, and the post office keeps delivering once a week. But here's where it gets wild. While people in the city are selling organs to afford a windowless studio in someone else's basement, these towns are facing a different kind of crisis too. Many empty homes, not enough breathing by. It's the landlord's worst nightmare and the squatter's ultimate fantasy. In rural Missouri, a bidding war basically means two raccoons fighting over a week-old piece of pizza. Investors, they don't even bother. Their GPS gets confused and gives up halfway there. Rent hasn't just dropped, it's evaporated into the cornfields. What you have is an unplanned experiment in minimalism, whether anybody wanted it or not. Leave a house empty for a decade and suddenly the town gets desperate. They're not searching for tenants, they're just hoping for someone with a heartbeat. Some towns will practically hand you a house for the price of a Netflix subscription, as long as you swear to keep the roof from caving in. It's the ultimate barter. You bring the carbon dioxide, they supply the four walls. No credit check required. Honestly, if your credit score was dazzling, you probably wouldn't be searching for a free spot in a place where the main attraction is a statue of a giant potato. People show up in old dented cars, sometimes after losing a job, getting divorced, or just realizing the rat race only ends with more rats. They're not looking for granite countertops or rooftop decks. They just want somewhere the sheriff won't knock on the door with an eviction notice and a bad attitude. In these almost ghost towns, you can rent a whole house for $200 a month or nothing at all if you're handy with a hammer and can live with creaky floorboards and the occasional friendly ghost. It's freedom, Midwest style, lots of flannel, minimal nightlife, and the kind of stability that's gone extinct in most big cities. A roof over your head, no ransom note attached every 30 days. But let's pump the brakes before you load up your trunk and aim for the Dakotas. This isn't some feel-good Hallmark movie where you find love in a pumpkin patch. This is survival, pure and simple. The nearest hospital, you better hope you have a reliable car and a guardian angel. As for jobs, unless you work online, fix ancient tractors, or have a passion for solitude, be prepared to make as much money as you find in the couch cushions. And the winters. They're not just long, they're endless. Think The Shining, but with less drama and a lot more snowdrifts. The silence is so thick it can feel like a second skin. Yet, for some, that silence is exactly the point. No more neighbors stomping above your head. No more landlords raising the rent because they can. Out here, you can actually build a life instead of just scraping by. You can trade isolation for independence and embrace a kind of freedom that's been priced out of most American cities. Sure, you might have to learn how to fix a leaky roof or chop your own firewood, but for many, that's a small price to pay for finally stepping off the hamster wheel. So, if you're brave or desperate enough to consider it, these forgotten towns might just be your best shot at living free in a country that feels like it wants to nickel and dime you for every breath. The path isn't easy, and it's definitely not glamorous, but it's real. And sometimes, real is all you need. Out here, you'll discover a quiet so deep it almost feels like another world. It's not just the absence of traffic or sirens, but the kind of stillness where your own thoughts become the loudest thing around. Especially when you're out in the biting cold, clearing snow from a porch that's been standing for generations. Held up by nothing but stubborn hope and lumber that's seen more winters than you have. For many, the silence isn't emptiness, it's freedom. It's the relief of not living under the constant threat of overdue bills or mounting rent. Out here, the only thing that keeps you awake at night is the howling wind, not the fear of a notice slipped under your door. For some folks, facing down a snowstorm feels like a fairer fight than facing eviction or collection calls. These small towns are a kind of middle ground, far enough away from the relentless pressure of city living, but not so isolated that you're totally off the map. They serve as a safety net for anyone burned out on the non-stop pace of modern life. For those who realize that the cost of keeping up is just too high, here, You trade the constant glare of city lights and the endless hum of traffic for a world where the only glow comes from one lonely streetlight, and the loudest noise at night is the crunch of snow under your boots. It might sound far-fetched, but some towns are taking it even further. Not only can you find a place to live without the weight of rent, but there are places that will actually pay you to move in. That's right. 2 American towns, among others, have put out the call for new residents and are willing to put money on the table to bring people in. If you thought the ghost towns of the Midwest were odd, brace yourself, because cash incentive communities are changing the game. Across the heartland, places like Kansas, Oklahoma, and the rugged back roads of West Virginia, there are towns on the brink. School buses run half-empty routes. Local coffers are drying up as people move away. Main Street, once the lifeblood of town, is slowly giving way to tall grass and creeping vines. But rather than fading quietly, these towns are getting resourceful. They're setting aside tradition and making bold offers, essentially putting up a giant open for business sign aimed at anyone willing to give small town life a shot. Not only is rent affordable or even non-existent, but some communities are sweetening the deal further with cold, hard cash. It's the sort of opportunity that seems almost unreal if you're struggling to make ends meet in a big city. While urban areas tighten their grip on every dollar, these rural towns are rolling out the red carpet. Some places offer free plots of land to build on. Others provide upfront grants, sometimes as much as $20,000, depending on where you go. Certain programs will even cover your internet costs, making it easier than ever for remote workers or freelancers to set up shop somewhere new. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, or worse, with no steady income at all, moving to one of these towns isn't just a fresh start, it could be the lifeline you need to get ahead. Imagine hitting rock bottom, watching your last few dollars dwindle, only to find an offer from a small Arkansas town willing to pay you just to join their community. It's a new spin on the old idea of starting over more than a relocation. It's a form of modern-day resettlement. For people trapped by the spiraling cost of living in cities, these programs offer a rare escape route. But don't mistake these offers as simply the product of neighborly generosity. The truth is, it's a matter of survival for these towns. They need to fill empty classrooms, or risk losing their schools entirely. They need enough families shopping at local stores to keep businesses open and the economy alive. Every new resident isn't just a number, it's a chance to keep the lights on, to preserve a way of life that's quietly slipping away. These incentives reveal a broader story about rural America's fight to stay alive in the face of decline. It's an invitation, but also a plea. Come help us rebuild what's been lost. Breathe life into streets that have grown to quiet, and in return, you'll find a sense of belonging and purpose that's hard to find elsewhere. For those willing to answer the call, the rewards go beyond just dollars or free rent. They offer a chance to be part of a community that truly needs you, and maybe, just maybe, a shot at a life where peace and possibility still exist side by side. When you arrive in a place like this, hauling nothing but a battered suitcase and a desperate hope to outrun your financial mess, you're not just another name on a lease. You become the lifeline these fading towns have been waiting for, a one-person economic rescue mission. The incentives they throw at you aren't just about filling empty houses. It's about survival, for both you and them. Forget about your past financial stumbles here. Nobody cares about your credit score or your debt-to-income ratio. They aren't interested in your bank statements or whether your references will vouch for you. What matters is if you can lend a hand, mow a lawn, wave hello on the sidewalk, or simply breathe life back into a block where every other porch is empty. The old rules of tenant vetting get tossed aside. Now, the only real requirement is a willingness to root yourself in a place that's been left behind, to become a thread in the fabric of a community that's wearing thin. But let's not kid ourselves, there's no such thing as a free ride, not even in these forgotten corners. Even the birds have to hustle, dodging predators and braving the elements. The trade-offs out here are real, and sometimes they'll leave you wondering if you made the right call. Sure, the rent might be zero, or close to it. The local government might hand you a check just for showing up, but you'd better prepare for a different kind of deprivation. Need emergency care? The nearest hospital might be a distant speck on the horizon, and you'll have plenty of time to question your choices during the long, lonely drive. Craving a night out? The only nightlife might be the rustle of wildlife in your overgrown backyard, the quiet drama of a raccoon knocking over your trash cans. Social opportunities are measured in potlucks, church suppers, and the handful of neighbors who might or might not welcome a newcomer. It's not a government handout. It's more like a challenge to see how much you can do without, in exchange for a shot at something steadier than the city ever offered. For some, this bargain is more than fair. The peace, the space, the chance to actually own something, these are luxuries you can't buy in a city where rents soar higher every year, and eviction is always one missed paycheck away. Out here, loneliness is a given, but so is freedom. It's a survival strategy, a kind of rural judo that lets you roll with a broken system instead of being crushed by it. When the city pushes you out, you can find refuge in places that time forgot, places eager for anyone willing to invest a little hope and elbow grease. The system still exists, but it can't reach you here, not in the same way. You get to rewrite your own rules, at least for a while. You've probably glimpsed these nearly abandoned towns. Their main streets missing more stores than they have left, their welcome signs faded and hopeful. Some will pay you just to keep the lights on, desperate for new faces and new energy. Maybe, in a quiet moment, you've wondered what it would be like to disappear into one of these subsidized havens, to make a fresh start where nobody knows your history. But don't let the promise of free land or easy money fool you. There's always paperwork, bureaucracy clings, even out here. And even if the requirements are lenient, you still have to show up to become part of something, however small. There's no such thing as a truly anonymous existence, even at the edge of civilization. These towns want people, not ghosts. And then there's the ultimate wilderness, places where rent is not just cheap, but non-existent. No neighbors, no town, just you and the raw edges of the map. In these spaces, the only requirements are resilience and a willingness to live outside the boundaries of ordinary life. Most people wouldn't last a week. The isolation, the silence, the sheer strangeness of being completely untethered. It's enough to send most running back to the chaos and comfort of city life. But for those who stay, for those who can withstand the solitude and the slow, patient work of building something from nothing, there's a kind of freedom here that you can't find anywhere else. It's not easy, and it's certainly not free in the ways you might expect, but it's real, and for some, it's worth everything they left behind. We're heading out to the edge of the map, two places where the population hasn't just dropped, it's boiled down to the essentials. Welcome to the trade-off town. Here your labor is the rent. Cash grants, forget them. Welcome to Kansas checks. Not here. The local economy isn't just small, it's ancient, rough around the edges, and honestly, a little bit unnerving. You'll find these places tucked into the misty valleys of Appalachia, the battered New England coast, and way out in the damp, sweltering stretches of the rural South. These communities gave up on chasing taxpayers a long time ago. What they want now is hands, people who can work. Rent isn't about writing a check. It's about checking boxes off a long, never-ending to-do list. This is the reality of work for housing. You show up with no money, no credit, no prospects, and the town says, forget the money, just make yourself useful. Imagine running from the city's rental nightmare and landing somewhere the landlord doesn't even care about cash. Money's lost its meaning here. There aren't even any stores left to spend it in. Your value is in what you can do, not what you can pay. It's a kind of survivalist communal living. You get a roof, 4 walls, maybe a wood stove. In return, you fix the fence. You check in on the old widow at the end of the dirt road before sunrise. You keep the weeds from swallowing the town library. For someone with nothing in their wallet, it feels like winning the lottery. No eviction threats, no insufficient funds, messages lighting up your phone. All you've got to trade is your time and effort. But let's not kid ourselves, there's a dark punchline. You're not just a tenant anymore. You're a walking, talking tool. If you disappear, things actually fall apart. People love to joke about dropping off the grid, but in a trade-off town, vanishing is the one thing you can't do. In a regular city, you could hide out in your apartment for weeks, and your absence might go unnoticed except by the delivery guy. Not here. If you skip out on your turn at the garden or forget to haul water, you can bet someone's knocking on your door. Here, poverty doesn't make you invisible, it puts you front and center. Your worth isn't about your bank balance. It's about whether people can count on you. It's a high-stakes social game. Work hard, and you're a star. Slack off, and your rent goes up, your reputation takes the hit. This is accountability with teeth. For people raised on do not disturb mode, it's a shock to the system. So why stick around? Why choose a life where you're always on call in a forgotten town? Because, maybe for the first time, you're not just a number on a spreadsheet. You're not a risk that a property manager dreads. You're needed. In these survivalist corners of Appalachia and the Midwest, housing stability is real. No rent hikes because there's no rent at all. There are no credit checks here. Your neighbors can see the calluses on your hands. That's your credit score. Honestly, it's the oldest survival trick in the book. Take the bank out of the picture, and what's left is raw human connection. It's freedom, but it's the heavy kind. You end up with a roof you paid for with sweat and long days. And yeah, working for your rent is tough. Being the heart that keeps a small town beating is exhausting. But stick with me, there's still one more place to go. There's a spot where you don't have to work, you don't have to pay. Heck, you don't even have to talk to anyone, because there's no one left. We've seen the forgotten towns. The ones that pay you to stick around. The ones where you work for every scrap. But now, let's take it further. How do you survive in America with zero income? No job, no paycheck, nothing to fall back on. It sounds impossible, but for thousands, it's just life. There's no single trick. It's a total overhaul, quiet, practical, and invisible to almost everyone. First, kill the rent. Once you get rid of rent, everything changes. That's where survival starts. Tiny homes, old sheds, abandoned trailers, call them what you want, but they're not a trend. They're lifeboats. Small spaces mean tiny bills. Heating? Barely there. Electric? Almost nothing. Maintenance? Easy. If you don't have a landlord knocking for money every month, you've bought yourself a shot at survival, even with zero income. Next, there's the shadow economy. In these places, cash isn't king, reliability is. People swap skills. One person watches the kids, another fixes the fence, someone brings groceries, someone else repairs a car. No paperwork, no W-2 South, just trust and handshake deals. Your reputation is your currency. And sharing isn't some act of charity, it's how everyone gets by. Then there's the side hustle. Income's not essential here, just helpful. Folks don't have careers, they just take what jobs they can find. Seasonal work, odd jobs, cleaning, repairs, whatever keeps the basics covered. A tank of gas, some medicine, maybe a phone bill. Work isn't about climbing a ladder. It's about patching holes when you have to. System hacks come next. Local governments, especially in shrinking towns, tend to look the other way. It's better to keep someone in a rundown house than let it rot. Sometimes there are utility credits, tax breaks, or just a blind eye when a bill's a little late. It's not neglect, it's survival for everyone. Then, radical self-sufficiency. Folks grow what they can: tomatoes, potatoes, beans. Doesn't matter if you're not a master gardener. Every meal you don't buy is money saved. They catch rainwater, run a single light on a solar panel, and live small so they need less. The less you need, the longer you last. Here's the hard truth. This life is rough. There's no cushion. If you get sick or winter's harsh, things can go bad fast. But for a lot of people, it beats crushing debt, endless rent hikes, or getting tossed out by a landlord. It's not irresponsibility, it's a different kind of responsibility. They work for themselves, not someone else. They don't chase a bigger paycheck. They shrink their needs. Once your needs get small enough, the system loses its grip. What these towns show is uncomfortable. The cost of living isn't just about how much you make. It's about the systems you're stuck in. Step outside, even a little, and whole new ways of living pop up. And just when you think it can't get more extreme, it does. Next, we head to places where money's barely a thing, and nobody pays rent, not by accident, but by design. I'm talking about abandoned industrial and mining towns. In some parts of America, rent didn't just drop, it vanished overnight. These towns used to run on steel, coal, copper, timber, or factories that promised jobs for life. Generations worked the same mines, the same plants, the same tracks. Everything in town revolved around one employer. Then one day it all stopped. The mine closed. The factory shut its doors. Teehee jobs disappeared, and so did most of the people. What's left? Empty houses on silent streets. Schools locked up tight. Stores with faded signs advertising prices from decades ago. And in these places, rent isn't just cheap, there's no one left to charge it. Some homes are boarded up, others just abandoned, waiting for someone to come back. In parts of Appalachia, the Rust Belt, and old mining corridors across the Midwest and West, people still hang on, living with almost no income. How? Well, for starters, there's no competition for a place to stay. When half the town is gone, you've got options. 5. Off-grid communities. There are people in America who don't pay rent not because they've found some clever loophole, but because they've chosen to step outside the whole system. These are the off-grid folks. No landlords, no monthly bills, no utilities, just land, a roof over their heads, and survival done their own way. You'll find these communities tucked far from the city, out in the deserts, deep in the woods, up in the mountains, or hidden on forgotten plots of rural land. They're not advertised. You won't stumble into one by accident. People end up here by choice, usually after rent, debt, and regular jobs stop making sense. When the paychecks dry up, so does the need and even the desires to keep chasing them. So, how do they get by with no income? First, shelter. They build their own. Tiny cabins, earth homes, old sheds fixed up, houses made from salvaged wood, no mortgage, no lease. If you build it, you own it or you share it with your neighbors. Next, energy. It's all decentralized. Solar panels power the basics. Wood stoves keep the cold away. Some folks skip electricity altogether. When you're not paying for power, making money stops being a daily worry. Water, they collect it. Rain barrels, natural springs, shared wells. Water's something you manage, not something you pay a bill for each month. Food is a whole other project. People grow veggies, raise chickens, forage, hunt, can, and dry what they get. Meals stay pretty simple and repetitive. You eat what you grow, and when you don't grow much, you eat less. There's no delivery service, no takeout, just a lot of planning and patience. Instead of cash, people trade skills. One person's good at building, another grows food. Someone else can fix tools. Barter replaces money. That's how they do it. They cut out almost every expense that requires a paycheck. No rent, no bills, no regular must-pays. And honestly, no steady income because there's nothing left to pay for. But let's be real, this life isn't easy. Winters are rough. Medical help can be hours away. When you mess up, it's not just annoying, it can be dangerous. If something breaks, you fix it, or you go without. Off-grid living means trading comfort for independence, security for self-reliance, convenience for control. Still, for plenty of people, that deal is worth it. When your survival depends on your own work, rent doesn't matter anymore. And after a while, you realize something huge. The system only has power over you if you rely on it. But what if you take it further, not just living off the grid alone, but building whole communities around shared survival? That's where the next kind of town flips the script. RV, mobile, and nomadic communities. Some Americans didn't just look for cheaper rent. They got rid of rent altogether by refusing to stay put. These are RV van dwellers, nomads. If you don't have a fixed address, you don't have a landlord. No lease, no eviction notices, no rent hikes taped to your door. Freedom, for these folks, comes with wheels. You'll see RVs and vans everywhere. Deserts, forests, highways, empty lots, old campgrounds that change with the seasons. These groups form quietly and keep moving, following the weather or chasing work. So how do they survive with little or no income? First, housing is mobile. RVs, vans, converted buses, trailers. Once you've paid for your ride, you're set. No rent if you own where you sleep. Some buy cheap, some inherit, some fix up old junkers, others share, trade, or join group caravans to split costs, or pay nothing at all. Next, location takes the place of income. Nomads rotate between free spots, public land, seasonal camps, desert patches, Places where parking costs nothing. When parking's free, so is your rent. Utilities, minimal or optional. Solar panels run the basics. Propane for cooking and heat. Water gets rationed, refilled, or shared. Life pares down to the essentials. And when your needs shrink, so does your need for money. Food's pretty basic. You cook in your rig. Join potlucks by discount groceries. Maybe barter for extras. No delivery, no fancy stuff, just what you need. Traditional jobs? Not really. People take odd gigs, temp work, do a little here and there, or nothing at all. Some live on savings or help each other out. Many nomads go months without earning a cent, because when you don't owe anything, you don't need much. Of course, there's a price. Life on the move means you never really settle. A breakdown can end your journey. Finding a legal place to park is a constant chore. There's freedom, but also plenty of uncertainty. Still, these nomadic communities stick together because they offer something most of modern life doesn't: choice. You decide when to stay, when to leave, who to camp next to, or when to be alone. Here, people swap permanence for control. No property taxes, no rent. No monthly bills breathing down your neck. Home isn't really a place. Here it's a choice you keep making, day after day. Now, imagine this: 7 intentional, minimalist, mutual aid communities. These aren't ghost towns that fell apart or lost their jobs. They didn't get left behind. People here decided to get rid of rent. That's it. No landlords, no leases, no monthly payments. Housing isn't something you buy, it's something people share, take care of, or look after together. You don't pay to exist, you pitch in. Money isn't the ticket for entry. Contribution is: you might cook, or grow food, or fix up a roof. Maybe you watch the kids or help out the elders. You give what you can, and in return, you get a place to call home. The homes are small, the spaces are designed with purpose, and people don't collect a lot of stuff. Radical minimalism here isn't an Instagram trend, it's how you make things work. Less stuff means fewer bills. Fewer bills mean you don't really need much income. Here's the big idea: when your expenses shrink to almost nothing, a paycheck stops being necessary. People share food, they split utilities, meals get cooked together, solar panels take care of the power, rainwater fills the tanks, gardens feed everyone. It's all a closed loop. Nothing goes to waste. Nothing's sucked out for profit. Money sits on the sidelines. Some folks go years without earning a cent. Others work a little, or not at all. No one gets punished for having less. No one gets rich off someone else's rent because, well, rent's not a thing. These places run on mutual aid, not markets. Someone gets sick, the others step in. Somebody's struggling, the group picks up the slack. Survival's a team effort, not a race. But, honestly, this life isn't for everyone. Privacy's not a given. You have to soften your edges. Comfort gets traded for meaning. You give up your little luxuries, but gain a kind of stability that's tough to find anywhere else. And here's the twist: these communities don't feel poor, they feel peaceful. There's no rent panic, no waiting for payday, no fear you'll be kicked out overnight. Just rhythms, seasons, and everyone doing their part. In a world that says more is always better, these towns make it by needing less. They're not fighting the system. They're walking away from it. That's the real secret, Tan. Why most people never hear about places like this. Housing doesn't have to be something you buy and sell. Rent isn't a law of nature and survival. Sometimes it only takes cooperation. Nobody's doubting these towns exist there, out there. The real thing to ask yourself is, could you live like this for a shot at real freedom? If this video got you thinking about what home, money, and freedom really mean, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Drop a comment. Would you actually go rent-free? If this challenged how you see things, give it a like and share it with someone who needs a new perspective. These hidden towns and forgotten communities. They're real, and so are the zero-income survival stories. Who knows? The next story you hear might flip your whole idea of life, money, and what freedom actually looks like.